Ontario's independent advisor on corrections reform closed out 2018 with a report looking at inmate-on-staff violence in the province's prison system. He offered 42 recommendations for action, shedding light on conditions that are out of sight to most of us. It's also the last report that Howard Sapers issued in that role, as the new provincial government chose not to extend his term. Here to tell us about his report and perhaps to clear up some misconceptions surrounding corrections in the province, Howard Sapers, Ontario's former independent advisor on corrections reform, and it's good to have you back in that chair.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Should we just do a little background off the top here? How were you informed by the new government that your services were no longer going to be required?
Well, it was a multi-stage process. Started off with an informal conversation. A deputy minister who told me that all the orders in council of advisors had been
appointees.
Yeah. They had all been revoked. But not to worry was the message, because the plan was that individual ministers responsible for their departments could reappoint people if it was merited, if there was still work to be done. And so I was having discussions about what that would look like, what kind of work would continue to be done, and of course the transformation of Ontario Corrections is far from finished. We were having those discussions, and I was quite confident actually that the work would continue.
But?
Well, then there was a change of ministers, and the new minister chose not to meet with me. And
so were you going to get reappointed by Michael Tabolo?
Well, I don't know.
Not sure.
I don't know. We were in conversation. The new minister did not take the opportunity to discuss it with me, and December 31st came, and that revocation that had been passed back in June was put into effect, and that was it.
You wanted to stay, I presume?
Well, I had agreed to do a third year. That was always the process. It was going to be 2 years to get the first reports done, to generate the blueprint for the change, and then the third year to implement if the reports were accepted, which they were. And so I had agreed to do the third year and to continue in that role of independent advisor.
No, there's one thing that's missing there.
Yeah.
We had an election.
There was an election.
So the previous government accepted your recommendations, but this one?
We'll see. The new legislation was passed in April before the election. It's up to the new government now to proclaim it. Many of the policy changes are in play, so there's work being done to implement those policy changes. As far as I know, there's still design work being done on some of the new builds and some of the retrofits. So I am confident there's going to be some legacy, some continuation of that work, but I won't be part of it.
Did you get an explanation from anybody as to why you weren't being renewed?
No. It was just, it was the traditional, the old joke, thank you for your service. Yeah.
Okay. Let's, as we look to present and future then, can we start by just having you remind everybody what you were tasked to do when you were brought on by the previous government in the first place?
Well, if we cast our minds back to the fall of 2016, there was a particular incident that captured the attention of the government of Ontario and the people of Ontario. It was a young man by the name of Adam Capet, who was 23 at the time, and he had spent over 1,500 continuous days in segregation. That's an isolation cell at the Thunder Bay Jail. So 1,500 days in segregation when his story came to light. And the government decided they needed to do something about that. It wasn't right. They acknowledged it wasn't right. They asked me if I would do a diagnosis for them on why segregation was misused in this case. And initially I refused, because for me, if segregation is being used to that extent, and that was just one particularly horrific story, but there are lots of issues with segregation in Ontario jails. My advice to them is that segregation is really a symptom, not a problem. And yes, I could provide some opinion about segregation, but really what they needed to do is take a look at their whole institutional correction system. The government agreed to that. So I was asked to provide a very quick report, a 60-day report on segregation, made a number of recommendations. That led to the drafting of new legislation. Then a second report on other areas of correctional operations, another 60 recommendations on everything from how to respond to deaths in custody better, to how to better prepare people for release, and how to manage and provide oversight for the whole enterprise. And just as that report was concluding, the minister of the day asked if I would take a look at inmate-on-staff violence. And so that's what led to the third report.
Okay. We have a graphic, actually, that indicates some of why you were asked to look at that. So, Sheldon, if you would, let's bring this up. This is at the top of page 2. Looking at a period from between 2012 and 2017, and essentially, this is an issue that has gone, as the numbers indicate, up and up and up and up and up every year, and then over the last couple of years, a really striking and dramatic increase. Why don't we just start with that? Why do you think it's gone hockey stick in the last couple of years?
Well, we didn't know. And that's exactly why the government asked me to look at this. There were various opinions. Some thought it was tied to policy change. Some thought it was tied to the profile of the men and women who were coming into custody. Some thought it was because of staffing issues. Some thought it was maybe all of those things. But nobody really knew. So we took a very, very close look. And we first looked at the trends across the province, and then we zeroed in on one institution.
Is this Toronto South?
That was the Toronto South Detention Centre. And the reason why we zeroed in on Toronto South wasn't because of all of its bad press. It was because when we looked at those numbers, we found that the incidents that happened at Toronto South almost exclusively explained or accounted for the increase. If you took Toronto South out of the mix, the number of incidents was relatively stable.
So the issue, whatever it is there.
So something was happening at Toronto South that was different.
We should just describe, I guess for a moment, it's relatively new, right? 5 or 6 years old, Toronto South?
Yep.
And it was supposed to replace 3 other old institutions?
That's right.
So is it fair to call it a super jail?
Well, you know,
whatever that means.
Let's leave those labels off. It is either the first or second largest jail in Canada, and the other one that's either the first or second is the Edmonton Remand Centre. So the 2 largest jails in Canada are purpose-built to hold people before they're convicted of anything. So these are remand centres, and that changes the whole notion of corrections. Corrections is supposed to be about correcting people who have received a sentence from the court. But the largest jails in Canada are now for pretrial. And in fact, 2/3 of every person who will sleep in a jail cell tonight in Ontario is pretrial. So we've changed the nature of the business. And Toronto South is part of that change. It is a large facility. It holds...
It's in the Premier's backyard, right?
Yeah.
It's in Etobicoke.
Yeah, and you know, well, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 people can be in custody there. It's very busy, and interestingly, what we found as well is that it's a complex place to operate. That said, it also has a huge proportion of staff that have been employed for less than 2 years. So you have this very complex, large facility being operated by some inexperienced people. That provides challenges. There's some new models of programs and security and how things are operated, so there's a learning curve there. Even though it's now 5 years, 6 years old, you still had to bring together the staff and the cultures from other institutions. And that needs to be carefully managed, and I think many people would agree it wasn't carefully managed in this case. So the institution has had some troubles in its early history, and we saw some of that manifest in the staff assaults.
Do you have any reason to believe that graphic that we showed earlier, where it's sort of going like this and then like that, do you have any reason to believe those numbers are going to, there it is again, maybe that hockey stick is going to flatline a bit because you now have a better understanding of at least what's going on in there?
Well, we made over 40 recommendations to deal with institutional violence, and they cover a variety of issues: staffing issues, training issues, accountability issues, management issues, infrastructure issues, policy renewal issues. There's a lot of work to be done. But we benchmarked those recommendations against best practices that we could find in other jurisdictions, and also best practices in place in Ontario. Remember, Toronto South is an outlier. So we don't have this problem everywhere, and other jurisdictions who also have large facilities with very similar profiles of inmates, et cetera, don't have this problem either. So I'm very optimistic that we can make progress, we can get those numbers down.
If they choose to.
If they choose to.
Do you know whether everybody who's in that facility needs to be there, as opposed to waiting for their trial at home?
Well, that's a tricky question. On the one hand, the easy answer is yes, because there's been a court process and there's been a decision and somebody's determined that these folks are a risk. either a risk to reoffend or a risk to not appear for a court appearance. And so that's why they're there. The more nuanced answer, and what I believe the more honest answer is it's clear to me that a lot of people that are in remand custody don't need to be there, that we have options. And the government is working on some of those options. There's bail reform initiatives, for example, to provide other options to custody for people who need to be supervised in the community, who can be released, but perhaps have to have different conditions on their release, so that the easy answer is not just sending them to Toronto South or to another remand centre. We know from right across Canada this is an issue. The people that tend to get collected and put into remand centres are people who often are there because of an administration of justice offense. In other words, they haven't committed a crime, but they've perhaps failed to appear. They've perhaps missed a reporting date with a probation officer.
So perhaps seen as unreliable by the court.
So then they get scooped up and they're held back in the system. And many people have observed, and I would agree, that this is often an overcorrection. There's other things that we can do to manage that behavior that doesn't involve custody.
I wonder, I mean, you've been on this program now 3 or 4 times, and every time you come in here, you kind of reinforce the fact that you're a pretty straight up guy. You follow empirically provable facts. You don't come to this necessarily with an ideological agenda, but you serve governments that do have ideological agendas. And it may be fair to say that liberals believe more in rehabilitation and conservatives believe more on, quote unquote, being tough on crime. Do you find yourself being kind of the ping pong ball between these two different ways of seeing the world? And do you have to tailor your recommendations accordingly?
Okay, so last question first. No, I never tailor my recommendations. If you're arguing your case on the facts, then the facts lead to a conclusion, and that's the facts. But of course, corrections and criminal justice is a political football. And it doesn't matter what your political stripe is. Everybody tends to use criminal justice issues, fear of crime, as a wedge issue. The Conservative government under Prime Minister Harper made a point of saying, campaigned on slogans like "we're tough on crime, or we're going to take back our streets."
And you work for them too.
I work for them. I've worked for federal liberal governments, federal conservative governments, provincial liberal governments, provincial conservative governments. And what I can tell you is that none of them are pure, and none of them are blameless. And sometimes the rhetoric is very heated. But I'll also point out, for example, that the Corrections and Conditional Release Act, the federal legislation that governs corrections and parole in Canada, was proclaimed under Conservative government when Prime Minister Mulroney was the Prime Minister of Canada. So there's a very significant policy that was linked to human rights values that was put into place by a Conservative government. So it's not just a liberal conservative thing.
No, there are nuances, because there are Mulroney conservatives and Harper conservatives, and Bill Davis conservatives and Doug Ford conservatives. Everybody's different.
Everybody's different. Yeah.
What is, since I'm guessing 99% of the people watching us right now have probably never been inside a jail, maybe more, what's the biggest misperception we have about the correction system in Ontario today?
Anybody believes that jails are cushy or club fed or day camp or daycare and all those other things that sometimes people label them, they're wrong. And the fact that people get fed and housed and given a bed doesn't make them pleasant places. Jails are high anxiety places. They're places that can be violent. They're not necessarily violent, and they certainly don't have to be violent. That means that people are hyper-vigilant, both inmates and the staff that work there. So the keepers and the kept are both always on guard. That makes for a very tense environment. There's nothing natural about being in jail, and there's nothing natural about being in a segregation cell or in maximum security, or being triple bunked with 2 people that you've never met before and having your head, inches away from a toilet. These are not normal conditions for people to be in. So jails are artificial environments. They're very tense environments. And they have to be managed very thoughtfully and very carefully.
How many years have you been studying this?
Oh, geez, 40?
40.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume things are better today than when you started 40 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you know, we've made progress. We've made lots of progress. There's still lots of things we don't know, and there's some things that we pretend to know. But fundamentally, the rules are pretty simple. You know, if you approach your job with respect and you value human dignity and legality, you will have good outcomes. So it's in the absence of respect, in the absence of dignified behavior and conditions of confinement, and when you don't respect the law, that you end up having troubles.
You ready for a little bit of a smart-assy question here?
Sure.
The Ford government has declined to re-up you.
Yeah.
The Harper government previously declined to re-up you. You've been fired at both the federal and provincial levels of government in this country. What is it that you're saying to these folks that they apparently are not all that interested in hearing?
Well, let me first correct the record.
Okay.
So my terms were not renewed.
So you weren't fired.
So I wasn't fired, just in
weren't
fairness
re-upped.
to them.
Yeah.
They just, you know, they were just, you know, it was like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Okay. You know, the messages are consistent. And I think sometimes maybe they get tired of hearing them. I remember one conversation when I was told, you know, I was asked this question by a provincial or a federal public safety minister. And he said, Sapers, why do you keep on repeating yourself? And I said, because you don't listen. And maybe they just, you know, got tired of that. But that's okay. You know, this is a business over my 40 years where we have seen change. It's been incremental and unfortunately too often crisis-driven. And if there's one thing I hope to do before I finally retire, it's to try to move away from that crisis-driven cycle and actually get some strategic thinking involved, and to see corrections actually evolve to the point where it is providing the kind of both return on investment, because it's expensive business, but also the public safety benefit that we really should be getting out of corrections.
Well, let's finish on this then, because you are a free agent now, right?
Yeah.
And not ready to retire?
No.
So what are you going to do now?
Well, I'm looking, and I'm talking to people. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of work in corrections and in criminal justice. In some jurisdictions, it continues to be a growth industry. That's not good news. It doesn't make me happy, but it will help me pay my bills. And so I'm pretty confident I'm still going to be involved. Somewhere, some way,
Yeah.
somehow. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess finally I should ask you, how did you get interested in this line of work anyway?
Oh, I went to university and I took a criminology course. Not for any particular reason. It fit my timetable, and that was it. And
It started with that?
Yeah, that was it. It was just fascinating material. Terrific instructors, professors that I was exposed to at Simon Fraser University in those days, and I stuck with it. It's not a complicated story. I can't tell you I always wanted to work in this field or I had some ambition. It was just.
But 40 years later, here you are.
Yeah, here I am.
Well, we're always grateful that you've answered our phone calls and visited this studio so many times, and we thank you for doing so and hope to see you again sometime in the future.
It'd be my pleasure to be back.
That's Howard Sapers, the former Ontario Independent Advisor on Corrections Reform.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.